Yeah, the documents show Gregory Ulrich not only threatened the clinic in the past, but talked about getting revenge.
Looking at least 5 injured critically.
More than 2 years before the shooting at the Buffalo Allina Clinic, Gregory Ulrich had a documented history of threats against the clinic. In October 2018, records show police got a call from a clinic doctor who said Ulrich was calling with threats about shooting, blowing things up, and practicing different scenarios of how to get revenge, and that he wanted it big and sensational so that it makes an impact. Police talked to Ulrich, who said he dreams about revenge to the people that tortured him, referring to back surgeries and medication issues. Ulrich was issued a harassment restraining order. The court record says he stated killing one individual wouldn't be enough, and that he had practiced different scenarios, and he was testing how to get through security with a length of steel, since he knew he only had seconds after getting past security to achieve his goal.
Ulrich pled guilty to violating that restraining order, showing up at the clinic, but the case was dismissed last year after he was found mentally incompetent. It is still unclear how he was able to get a gun because a probation agent highly recommended he not be allowed to own one after one of his prior cases. Chris and Gia?
Yeah, surprising after you hear that. All right, Jennifer, thanks a lot for updating us.